Yes, I am because we are. Thank you very much for everyone that attend this call. We are going to start our Pan-African history call. I'm going to ask our brother Zoe Owusu to help us with a prayer. Then we can start the meeting.
All right, please let's pray. Awurade Nyankopɔn yɛda wase ɛma ɛnɛ da yi. Sɛ wode yɛn abɛdu asomdwoe mu, yɛbɛhyia mu ɛwɔ ahanom. Awurade yɛsrɛ wo sɛ wo tumi ne w'ahoɔden mbra yɛn so. Na ade biara a yɛbɛyɛ wɔ ha, deɛ yɛbɛyɛ adesua, deɛ yɛbɛyɛ nimdeɛ, ɛyɛ kyɛmfa na yɛnya mfaso mfiri so. Afei yɛtu yɛn founders ɛhyɛ wɔn nsa. Wɔn a ɛdi yɛn anim, wɔn a ɛdi yɛn kan, ɛne wɔn a ɛtie nyinaa no, yɛde wɔn hyɛ wɔn nsa sɛ Awurade boa yɛn. Na ma ebibifo, ebibiman ntu mpɔn. Ade biara a asɔre etia ebibiman ɛne ebibifo a ama yɛntumi nkɔ yɛn anim no, Awurade yi ne nyinaa afi yɛn akwan mu. Ɛwɔ wo dɔba Yesu Kristo din mu nti. Amen.
Yes, amen. Thank you very much, Brother Zoe Owusu. We can continue with your report.
All right. Hello, my name is Zoe Owusu, reporting from Ghana. I welcome you all to this section of the Saturday History Call for I Love Black People movement. It's a great honor for me to present fellow Black people from Ghana, West Africa, and the entire African people at heart. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Black brothers and sisters, I Love Black People app is using technology to build a global network which helps to protect of racism and xenophobia, especially while you travel around the world and in new environments. This tech startup is powered by Bill Murray and the Green Book API. Many individuals have been engaged from the length and breadth of Africa and the diaspora, the Caribbean, the United States, the United Kingdom, Asia, and many more parts of the world. We are accessible to over 58 languages currently and almost all states in Africa and the diaspora. www.iloveblackpeople.com. This is the Pan-African movement for the love of Black and the Black at heart, which is crowdsourcing Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to populate our digital space. The Green Book, that's the survival guide, which is also called I Love Black People app on all devices. That's Google Play Store and Apple iOS. You can download it by using I Love Black People app. We encourage you all to please download the app now, I Love Black People app, and recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly spaces in your area, community, to help protect Black lives from humiliation of racism and xenophobia. In addition to the website and app, we have the long-standing Global Green Book, a Black survival guide that can be gotten on Amazon. This Black Survival Guide was created to help Black people access Black-owned and Black-friendly healthcare providers globally, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also lock it down on Black content on every Thursday, Sundays, and Tuesdays on HUR Voices Serious. That is VOICES SIRIUS XM. XM is capital, channel 141, hosted by our honorable co-founder, Sinclair Skinner. Brethren, this is not a one-man's work. Let's all join hands, spread the love. With your help, we are building a global network to help protect Black when they are most vulnerable, especially while traveling around the world or in a new environment. Let's save lives. Join the movement now. I Love Black People recommend the app for families, loved ones. Share the link to download and get the app downloaded. Join your brothers and sisters on the I Love Black People movement. Opt for a membership. You can become a member, a founding member, a moderator, or a brand ambassador. We run free online Black history and health classes with our seasoned professor and lecturer, Dr. Terren Wright, and Queen Mother, Nana Equia and Zinzili, respectively, where you will be awarded with certificates. As one African American Muslim leader and human rights activist rightly said, Malcolm X, and I quote, "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything," unquote. And I quote again, "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything. Let's stand for Africa, the love of Blacks. Unity is strength. Beloved, let us unite until victory is won entirely on the African continent and beyond. Live it, love it. You are Black, we are Black. I love Black people. I am because I am. I am because we are. I love Black people. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Zoe Owusu from Ghana. I am because we are. Thank you for the wonderful report. Up next, we're going to have our brother Edwin Chamba from Tanzania. Edwin Chamba, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. As you said, my name is Edwin Chamba. I'm an ambassador from Tanzania. I greet everyone and thank everyone for what you are always doing to make sure I Love Black People movement against racism and xenophobia goes well in spreading love across the globe. Yes, without wasting your time today, I'm going to continue with my presentation about Afrophobia in Tanzania. As I said lastly, that in Tanzania, Afrophobia and its features are very rare in our societies, but this doesn't mean that there is no such little activities that contribute to that rare impacts of Afrophobia in communities. We do thank God in Tanzania that we have much love to the guests and foreigners that come in our country. But unfortunately, there is such kind of Afrophobia in our societies and communities that starts within our families and homes. Yeah, we have some harassments on children, women, and in some areas, men are suffering the same harassment. That included in type of Afrophobia happening in Tanzania. This type of harassment includes violence against women, men, foreign domestic workers, abuse case, sexual abuse, children abused in different ways, such as sexual and child labor, especially in gold industries, farms, and homes. We are aware of some women within the country having huge challenges in their families accompanied by humiliations, sexual violence, and intimate partners violence. In some places, these challenges of women turns out to men as some men face some things from their female partners. This can negatively affect women and men physically, mentally, sexually, and may increase chance of and risks of acquiring HIV in some settings. Our kinds of children facing some Afrophobia challenges, such as maltreatment like violence, punishment, involving physical and sexual, psychological, and emotional violence. Here also children faces denigration, ridicule, threat, intimidation, discrimination, rejection, and other physical forms of hostile treatments. I remember once our father in paradise, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, said in Swahili, ukizoea kula nyama ya mtu hauwezi kuacha. We may say it in English, if you are used in eating human meat, you will never stop doing it. He said this because he didn't want to see Tanzanians in problems of tribalization, humiliation, and any kind of Afrophobia, as he believed that if we start segregating ourselves or segregating other people and rejecting them, rejecting foreigners and guests, it means that when the guests and foreigners are not there, we will be segregating only ourselves in our societies. That's why he used that statement. But in continuation, we follow some regulations so that we can regulate these Afrophobia in our country. We use the police force, NGOs such as Smaujata and others, and the community itself is just preparing and doing some activities that decrease or removes some of the Afrophobia within our country, including the myths of gender, child, and elders. I may thank everyone for today. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I am because we are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Edwin Chamba. I am because we are. Thank you for a wonderful report from your country, Tanzania. Up next, we are going to have our brother Fontekwe. Fontekwe, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I can hear you very clearly.
Yes, you can present your report. You have 4 minutes.
Okay. By the way, I thank you all for this amazing opportunity, for giving me the privilege to share my views with my fellow Pan-Africans. So, fellow Pan-Africans, accept my humble greetings. As usual, I am called Fontekwe, addressing your hierarchies from Boya, Cameroon. Yeah, on this edition of today's summit, we continue to brainstorm basically on how our treasure, our continent, will be emancipated irrespective of the challenges we have at hand. I'm very confident that we possess all what it takes to achieve our strategic objective if efficiently and effectively utilized. There is no sweat without sweat, and no victory without warfare. We know. So we must be very defiant and sacrifice all valuable requirements which are necessary to defy our foe or our foes, because there are many. Okay, Africa can never be stopped from scintillating because our competence is diversified, which is true, and our efforts relentless, which excruciate our foes and make victory rather inevitable. So we are going to win. It's not something that we say, no, we do it temporarily. No. What we all are advocating for is just around the corner. It's just around the corner, very near to us. But we need to act collectively and decisively so as to repel any dichotomy and proceed within the framework. We all are aware of the challenges at our disposal, but they will all become a thing of the past if dealt with in unison. So we need one another's strength. We are not equally gifted, but each one has a bit of strength to contribute. My beloved brothers and sisters, unity is strength. So we need to focus on ourselves and our capabilities rather than on the Eastern or Western bloc, because their policies on us are all indifferent. So concerning the issue of Afrophobia in my nation, Cameroon, they say a junior lion cannot go outside his territory and look for trouble. You can only look for trouble when it is beside the parent. Meaning to say, Afrophobia is
Yes,
not
only have
really that.
remaining.
Sorry.
Yes, you have 1 minute remaining for your report.
Thank you. Afrophobia in Cameroon is not really visible because our enemies know, or the Afrophobian practitioners, they are fully aware that they cannot pronounce that argue unless we go into the territory and they have the audacity to treat us the way they have been treating before. So yeah, when they come here, they pretend to be friendly. They pretend as if we are equal, but meanwhile, there is big disparity between us according to the ideology. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I am because we are, and together we move further.
Yes, thank you very much for Tekwe. I am because we are. Thank you for wonderful report. Up next, we are going to have our brother Shadrach Muni. Hope I just pronounced your name. You can unmute yourself. Shadrach.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, you have
Okay.
4 minutes to present your report.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the floor. As you have said, I am Honorable Nuni Shadrach. I am a Cameroonian. So I'm very happy to see this framework and to share this point of view with all my brothers from Africa. I love Black people. Without withstanding, I'll go directly to the point of the day, which is to talk about Afrophobia in our country. As we all know, Cameroon has a diverse entity in culture. That is, Cameroon was being colonized by two colonial masters, that was British and French, and the greater part went to French, and the smaller part went to British. So what we are facing Afrobean today is about discrimination in the English part of Cameroon. That is those two regions speaking English. So there's a little more of discrimination in this part simply because the greater population is for Francophone and the smaller part is for the English. That means even administrative organ, that is the greater one is being for the French. So those are the discrimination that we are facing in Cameroon until 2016, that is sparked up to become a crisis that 3 years after they called for a national dialogue, who were to resolve that they needed to bring some changes or points that could facilitate or to bring an end to this discrimination that we were facing these two regions of the Anglophone. So up to date, there are still some resolutions that have not been implemented in the field. That is why up to date, we still have a little bit of discrimination based on the Afrobean part of our own country. But nevertheless, we still hope that the government on its own part is doing something to remediate to this problem. But we are all Africans. We know that there will always be discrimination in one way or the other, either in cultures. But what we need to do is to put our hands together, look forward as our slogan is, if I am, therefore we are. So we hope that in the upcoming days or years, I love Black people who contribute
to the end of discrimination in these two regions with the implementation of the organization, in fact, in Cameroon, yes, because I know we can greatly contribute enough to the end of this Afrobenism in our country. So that is what I have to say for my country concerning Afrobenism. So thank you very much for passing me the floor one more.
Yes, thank you very much, Shadrach from Cameroon. Thank you for your wonderful report. Yes, up next, we are going to have our brother, Kasim Shahid. Yes, Kasim, can you hear us? Okay. He just left. Okay, we are going to have our brother Robert Ruai from South Sudan. Robert, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, hello.
Yes, Robert, we can hear you. Yes, you have 4 minutes.
Okay,
to
thank you.
your report.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. I love Black people. Wherever you are, good evenings, good mornings. I'm Robert from South Sudan, which was actually previously part of Sudan. And I want to first start by saying, I request all of us to at least to give some prayer to our brothers and sisters from Sudan. We have been seeing they are fighting for almost 3 weeks without seeing any solution from them. So we beg and we pray for God so that they can also physically rebel from them. I'm going to at least talk about Afrophobia in South Sudan, and we actually know Afrophobia is anywhere in Africa here. When you look at South Sudan has been one of the crafted country in Africa for almost seven years now. People are devastated for so many reasons. There's a lot of crisis. People are discriminated there. You see that South Sudanese by themselves, they're also discriminating themselves. So through the use of
Yes, Robert, are you still there? Can you hear us? Okay, I think they are having issues with their network. Yes, Robert, can you hear us? Yes, Robert, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself. Okay, they're having issue with their network. We're going to have our brother Shahid Kasim from Ghana. Yes, Shahid, you can unmute yourself.
Yes. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, you have 4 minutes to present your report.
Okay. Good afternoon, brethren, on this noble platform. It's a privilege once again to join my African contingents to have a word or two about Ghana as far as Afrophobia is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're all aware, Afrophobia is a perceived hatred for the culture and people of Africa, the Africans. Just like xenophobia has become a consistent feature of contemporary sub-Saharan Africa. In recent times, countries that are often described as an oasis of peace and tranquility and the epitome of democratic virtues like my beloved country, Ghana, have been cited by intellectuals in the discourse on xenophobia. On June 19, 2020, several armed Ghanaian citizens demolished the residential building of the Nigerian High Commission in Accra with a bulldozer. This incident shocked the Nigerian community in Ghana and the Nigerian ambassador and the Nigerian administration of Mahmoud Buhari, which condemned the attack. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo apologized for the incident, called for investigation into it, and promised to rebuild the embassy housing. Africa has a long history of appetite, and together we have galvanized ourselves to unite under solidarity for the liberation of sister countries within the continent. When Ghana gained independence in 1957, Kwame Nkrumah was very inimical in that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up to the total liberation of the African continent. The leaders of that time sees Africa as a continent of blacks with one destiny and a common sense of purpose. African Union, AU, should support the resurgence of Pan-Africanism at the regional and global levels. If left unchecked, the divisiveness caused by xenophobic incidents across Africa may deter AU's goals of achieving regional development, peace, and solidarity. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also take this opportunity to say a little current affairs issues in Ghana. Ghana, as you're all aware, just like in other economies in the world, have hit by the global pandemic, that is the COVID-19. And now we are gradually sailing through. Economies are becoming better nowadays. Our current president is His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo. Thank you very much. I am because we are. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you very much, Shahid Kasim from Ghana. Thank you for that wonderful report. And let me also take this opportunity to wish our brothers and sisters from Sierra Leone, Togo, and South Africa happy Independence Day. They celebrated their Independence Day on Thursday. It was on 27th. So happy Independence Day, brothers and sisters. Yes, we are going to continue our call with the Pan-African Healthcare class with Nana Akua. And you know, Nana Akua likes watching beautiful Black faces. And if you would like to receive a shout out from her, you can turn on your camera. Yes, welcome, Nana Akua.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. How you doing, Yvonne?
Yes, I'm doing good. How about you?
And hey, Curtis. Thank you for your form. I still owe you an email response. I will do that. Tan, maybe is that fun? We're a little light, right? So that's who is supposed to be here is here. But everyone else, greetings as well. Hazel Owusu. So we are talking this week about, this is 7, right? Is this week 7?
Yes.
So let's see how good I am today with sharing the screen. I did it. Right? Yes, I did it. So let me turn this around. So these last 2 weeks of this series, we are talking about cleansing and detoxification, right? And so we know that cleansing and detoxification is key. We've spent previous weeks discussing what holistic health is, what to eat, how to eat it, what nutrients we get from our foods, what they do, how to find them in herbs, how to use homeopathic remedies, essential oils. We've talked about superfoods. We've talked about managing our emotional selves and our emotional health, our spiritual well-being, our psychological well-being, stress release, things of that nature. So now with cleansing and detoxification, we are primarily in this unit talking about physical cleansing or detoxification, but we also know, as always, the holistic view is to deal with the mind, body, and spirit. And so we know that there's always that need to manage our physical cleansing, but know that there's also sometimes a need to cleanse or purge and build our spiritual selves and our emotional selves. And we've dealt with that a little bit, but I may include some of that here in this course, but know that we are primarily talking about physical cleansing and detoxification, right? So we'll talk about what it means to detox or cleanse, what are some of the different methods of cleansing and detoxification, what the paths of elimination are, and how to do internal and external cleansing. So before we can discuss a thing, we always have to know what it means and what it consists of, right? So we know that a working definition of detoxification is the process of removing a poisonous or harmful substance from the body, or the neutralization or mitigation of its effects, right? So either removing that substance, that toxin altogether, or neutralizing it, right? Making it impotent, right? Making it ineffective. And we know that cleansing is the process of making something thoroughly clean, ridding the body of unhealthy, unnecessary substances, or cleansing by washing. So we usually will use these terms interchangeably. In some cases, one might be more fitting than the other, but for these purposes, it's pretty much the same. We're talking about cleansing the body, removing toxins, mitigating any effects that whatever poisons or toxins we bring into the body, so that they have no negative effect on us. We know that in this process, we may use herbs, we may use homeopathics, we may use cleansing diets, so we may use food to cleanse or detox with. We may use the art of fasting. There may be a number of detox body or foot baths that can be used to cleanse the body. Even different types or forms of massage can be cleansing or detoxification. Lymphatic massage, deep tissue, all of these can move energy and relieve certain concentrations of toxins in the body to promote healing. Skin brushing, we know, is another method in terms of cleansing, also dealing with the lymphatic system, also dealing with our largest organ, the skin, to remove toxins from the body. And we'll get into most of these a little more. But these are some of the basic methods of cleansing. And we know that with cleansing, there will be side effects. There'll be symptoms of cleansing or detoxifying the body. Some are unpleasant. Some are sometimes surprising, where you may not have realized that this can happen when you're going through a cleanse or a detoxification. But body aches, headaches, body odor, bad breath, fatigue or weakness, purging, skin rashes, These are all common symptoms or side effects of doing a cleanse or a detoxification. And definitely if you are having some sort of chronic ailment, or you have some kind of condition where your system may be a little compromised or weakened or out of balance, this is why you would usually have to consult with a healthcare professional before doing a cleanse or detox, because it can have some of these unpleasant or negative side effects. Most, though, are tolerable. Most are not severe. And usually you would want to ease into a cleansing or detoxification anyway. Doing a really harsh, really hard type of cleanse is usually not going to be a good idea anyway. Have a little story here. I have done retreats for many years. And I would have groups of people, usually women, but always open to men and women. And we would go to the mountains in West Virginia, which is a state here, maybe a couple of hours from where I'm here in Maryland. And I do these retreats where we spend the weekend and we're talking about how to heal the body, how to meditate and heal the mind. We would do spiritual baths and cleansings. We would go on nature walks. We would go into town and do massages. And this particular town in West Virginia has these springs, these bathhouses, where the water, this really mineral rich water, really, and it's high temperature, serves as a detox or cleansing bath. But in addition to the activities, I controlled the food, and I only, prepared meals that were either vegetarian or seafood, so pescatarian, or, so no fried foods, no meats, no junk foods, no sodas, no caffeine, no sugar, so and I think when I first started doing these, to me, someone coming on a, what did I call it? We used to call it a wellness and wilderness retreat. Then I think I changed it to a relaxation and rejuvenation retreat. Either way, my thought was, if you're coming on such a retreat, you would maybe not be planning on eating McDonald's or burgers or fries. But I learned a lesson that I had to specify those things, because I had someone who came, and because we were not serving coffee and bacon and whatever stuff that she maybe was expecting, I guess her withdrawal symptoms or her side effects of this cleansing was that she had a headache. And when I tell you, she made it miserable for everybody as she complained about the food that was offered, right? I had to very quickly figure out how to change that. So I had to write in, the packet that we are not having this, that, or the other thing. And if it was something that you needed to have, you have to bring it with you, right? So just know that we get into a routine of eating a certain way every day. When you stop that, right, you may in fact have a response. Now, just because it appears to be a negative response or it is an unpleasant response doesn't mean that that's a thing you have to keep introducing into your diet. That simply means you've been doing it, it's used to it, and you now have to retrain your body to not expect your caffeine in every morning, or to not have your bacon and eggs and fried potatoes every morning. And so you may go through those effects of not having those foods, or fasting from those foods, or refraining from those foods. So so it's not always a pleasant situation, but you have to ease yourself into that. And who would have thought that just not having certain types of foods for a couple of days would bring someone into that. So it does happen. I'm more so, though, talking about not going too hard in terms of, oh, you've never fasted before and you're going to do a nothing fast, right? Or you're just going to do just water for 30 days. That's going a little too extreme too quickly without having prepared your body for some, with smaller fast or with juice fast. Not that I'm not a proponent of water fast anyway. Somebody has put me in a water fast group in Facebook, but not quite sure why. Because I've never really promoted water fast. But some people who are trying to lose weight very quickly and they, can prepare themselves to do that and they, report these good results. But that's not really something that I've ever used or suggested anyway. But if one were to do that, that's not something you just jump right into and say, hey, I'm gonna cleanse my body and I'm just gonna stop eating everything and I'm just gonna drink water and not have done the proper preparation. So ease yourself into a cleansing regimen. The paths of elimination. So these are the organs that filter out or cleanse the body of different substances. So whether it's blood, whether it's fluids, whether it's oils or fats, whether it's carbon monoxide, whatever, different toxins, these different organs are responsible for elimination. And they are the kidneys, the liver, the colon, the skin, and the lungs. And ideally, you want to address each of these. Most of us only think of cleansing the colon. Oh, I'm doing a detox and, it's sending me to the bathroom. Or, the whole goal being to just move your bowels. Now, definitely if there is a sluggish colon and you're not going every day, at least twice a day, absolutely that's in order. But we know that cleansing the body is much greater than just a colon cleanse. All of these areas have to be addressed. So you would create a routine around each of these paths of elimination. So let's talk about some of the ways of cleansing each. So I don't love this handout, so we're going to skip past that. So let's just talk about some ways to cleanse the liver. And usually this will be, of course, in the way of diet and maybe drinks, smoothies, teas, that sort of thing. So we know that foods that cleanse the liver are okay, it's a little bigger. Okay, great. So we know that foods like grapefruits, beets, carrots, apples, broccoli, lemons, limes, arugula. I'm growing arugula, by the way. We'll see how that goes. Walnuts, cabbage, cauliflower, avocado, spinach, garlic, turmeric, and then of course green tea. These are all foods. Some are herbs and some are foods that we know cleanse the liver. In addition, that's not mentioned on this left side is cilantro. And we know that cilantro is excellent, especially if you come in contact with heavy metals. If you work in certain types of industries, whether it's outside with metals. I actually have a friend that literally works in like a metal, they mix or makes different types of, and they come in contact with all these different metals. This is something that definitely they would need to include in their very regular cleansing routine, because you're coming in contact with different metal materials. But we might get it in household products, utensils, paint. Sometimes our makeups will have different traces of metals. We know that fish can sometimes be intoxicated with mercury. We know that what we think are silver amalgams are mercury amalgams that are in our mouths for our fillings. We know that certain vaccines used to and maybe still contain mercury and some other metals. So we definitely come in contact with heavy metals in different ways. But all of these are really great for cleansing the liver. Some you can simply just eat, juice, cook down a bit, maybe saute them, lightly cook them to maintain all of their nutrients. But these are all good options for cleansing the liver. This handout gives us a 3-day cleansing using a lot of the foods that's mentioned here. This is not an easy copy for me to read, but it is in the packet. If you wish to get the packet or don't have it, I can send that to you. This is a quick and easy liver cleanse juice where you would include beetroot, lemon, carrots, cucumber, and ginger. And beets are not the most tasty root vegetable, but adding those things to it, I think that sounds not so bad. Also, this is another recipe for, this really probably has some things that are good for both the liver and the kidneys, right? Looking at these ingredients, and we'll talk about the liver in the kidneys in a moment. But this pineapple cleanser smoothie, this contains celery, cucumber, pineapple, lemon, parsley, ginger, and coconut water. This sounds really good. But there's just always options for you to include things into your diet that will help cleanse one of these paths of elimination, or even several at a time. As I mentioned, that smoothie recipe is both good for liver and kidney. Turmeric, we know they have it listed here as a liver detox, but it is also good for the kidneys as well. But some of the benefits of turmeric is listed here: detoxes the body, boosts immunity, protects liver tissue, cleanses and purifies the blood. We know that anything that cleanses the liver cleanses the blood, and we therefore know it's also good for the skin. So this is something where you're going to get sort of a three-fer, right? So we're going to be able to address cleansing the skin, the liver, and the kidneys if we're using turmeric. We know that turmeric is also good for symptoms of cough and cold, flu symptoms. It improves circulation, improves the skin, as I just mentioned, and it's good for preventing internal blood clotting. So moving on to the kidneys, we know that foods that are good for the kidneys are going to be cucumbers, celery, parsley, lemon. This is just sort of a little recipe where you would blend this all together. There are other herbs and things. I don't think that's in a handout. Let me see. Yeah, so no. So we know that if we were talking about teas that we do, there are certain herbs like uva ursi or juniper berry or buchu. These are all good herbs for the kidneys. Some people will use parsley seed, watermelon seed, celery seed in tea form as well. And of course, plenty of water. We know that water is cleansing and purifying in and of itself, and will cleanse and purify every organ in the body, and is a good healer all by itself. But adding it to say some lemon or lime or some celery or cucumber, you're enhancing that, and you're enhancing that effect that it will have on our kidneys. Moving on to the colon. So again, and I mentioned that we're not only focusing on the colon, but of course the colon is important. I just want you to address the other areas as well. But we know that colon cleansing is important. We eat constantly, and we know that when we eat, not every food that we will take in to the body is usable. It will not provide us nutrition. So there will be waste, right, that has to be released from the body. So we know that we have to release that through the colon mainly. And foods like flax seeds, aloe vera, alfalfa, peppermint, spirulina, and wheatgrass, mango, chickweed, probiotic yogurt, cascara sagrada, fermented foods, fennel seeds, and certain organic fruits like apples and grapes and papaya and things of that nature. We know that these are all colon cleansing foods. So again, as you are adding and making effort to cleanse your colon, you can add these foods into your diet. You may do wheatgrass shots. These are little shot glass size juices of the wheatgrass that people will take daily. It boosts their immunity. It gives them more energy because it's providing oxygen and helps with the oxygenation of the blood and increases your blood flow and all of that in the body. And we know that helps with eliminating toxins. Some people will choose to do that every day for 3 weeks or a month, or every season they'll do, you know, a series of wheatgrass juicing. Or some people may take aloe vera juice every day, which we know serves as a mild laxative, right? And just as healing and soothing as it is topically to the skin, we know that it's also healing and soothing and cleansing to the whole gastrointestinal tract, right? You may include certain fruits in your diet every day. The high fiber fruits are always going to be a better option. I really wouldn't necessarily pick, say, a mango or a pineapple or a grape as your primary fruit to use if you are trying to cleanse the colon, especially if you're having some blood sugar irregularities. However, we know that they are good for you, and most of us love these very sweet fruits. But if you're talking about cleansing the colon and really giving the fiber that it needs to kind of bulk up some of the waste and move it out the body, I would go with more high fiber fruits like your apples and pears and plums, maybe your berries and your citrus like your grapefruit and things of that nature that are high in pectin, fruit fiber, right? These are going to be your better options when you're talking about the fruits to choose for colon cleansing. And then, of course, the herbs we have mentioned here, the chickweed, the Cascara sagrada. There's so many others that are stimulant herbal laxatives that can also be used to cleanse the colon, but some are a little more aggressive than others. These are definitely chickweed and fennel are more soothing, easier laxatives. Cascara is a stimulant, can be a little rough for some people, but if you have a sluggish colon, this might be a good option for you. Senna is another popular colon cleansing herb, but usually people will add peppermint to that, or chamomile or ginger, just to make it a little more soothing to the stomach and the intestines so that it doesn't cause any griping and such. So a lot of, you know, options here for how to, you know, cleanse the colon. Alfalfa, we know that sprouted foods are always going to give you the good natural enzymes. These help with digestion and therefore help with elimination. So we know that's a good option. Flaxseed, high fiber, is helping to, again, bulk up the waste in the colon and help to gather it and prepare it for moving out of the body. The thing to remember with the high fiber fruits or even the flax seeds and things of this nature, increasing your water is going to be key, because as you gather things up in the colon and they're ready to get moved out, you have to bring that water into the body behind it to flush it out so that it doesn't get reabsorbed into the lining of the colon. This little poop chart here, I think, is important, even though maybe we don't always want to look at or talk about our stool, but this is important because we have to keep track of what our waste looks like. We have to know how it comes out of the body and in what formation, because we know that if it's very hard and lumpy and looks like rocks or nuts or what have you, and it's hard to pass, we know that there's constipation. And we know that there's likely not enough fiber and or water in the body, right? So you have to adjust that with your diet and maybe some herbs. We know that in the opposite end of the spectrum is we know we shouldn't have entirely liquid, runny, watery waste where there are no solid pieces, because then we know that the food is not spending enough time in that digestive process and it's kind of moving straight through the body, and you're not absorbing any nutrients that you should be from foods that you're eating, or there's something that's just altogether bad that you've taken in, and the body is trying to quickly get rid of it. Either way, your food has not processed or digested properly, and we're now in the midst of diarrhea. So we know that we would need to add more bulking agents, more fibrous foods as well, more electrolytes probably. We would have to make sure, and if you've ever traveled and had this issue, you're going to stay away from spicy, saucy things. You're going to, eat more carbohydrates, dry carbs, whether it's dry toast or crackers or maybe rice, plain rice, no sauce or gravy with it and that sort of thing. But different ways to kind of bulk up your stool to get to where we would be somewhere in this area here, somewhere around 3, 4, 5, I think are all fine. They kind of, I think, are alluding that 5 is the best because it's passed easily. But I think anywhere in this area is going to be a more healthier looking type of stool. So, you want to watch out for that and keep track of what your waste is looking like, how it feels coming out, how you feel when you are releasing it, right? So, as a colon therapist, people, would come in and say, oh, every time I go to the bathroom, I just feel sick. It's hard to pass it. I don't go every day. Like, all of these are signs that there's a real problem with the colon, because you shouldn't feel ill every time you have to have a bowel movement. So you really have to do well to adjust your diet, your water intake, and consider some healing herbs to treat the colon. Now, I don't think this is the packet where I've added. So let's talk a little bit about the skin. Now, I did a little bit when I mentioned that you're treating the skin when you're treating the liver. And I mentioned earlier in one of the slides about skin brushing. So we know that one of the best ways when you're doing a fast or a cleansing or a detox diet is to incorporate skin brushing. So skin brushing is a dry, natural bristle brush that you use to brush the body, the skin, in an upward kind of smooth motion towards the heart. So up the legs, up the torso, across the shoulders, across the back. As if you get one of those long handle bristle brushes, you'll brush up the back. But skin brushing helps to stimulate the lymphatic system, and help boost immunity and the body's ability to fight off infection. And then topically, of course, it is slothing away any dead skin cells and allowing the skin a better environment to kind of replenish itself. It's going to do it anyway, but we don't want a lot of dry, dead skin cells on the body, and we've not done something to kind of get that cleansed off or brushed away. But there are many herbs that deal with the skin. Some people will use sandalwood essential oil, lavender essential oil. Red clover is a good herb, in addition to a lot of the liver cleansing herbs like milk thistle, yellow dock, burdock, things of that nature. These are all good herbs for the skin. Lastly, the lungs. We did not talk enough about the lungs, and there is another handout I do have about the lungs, but we know there are many herbs and foods that are good for the lungs as well. Probably the easiest way is for me to so while I pull up the list of the herbs, we know that conscious breathing is just like skin brushing for the skin. We know that conscious breathing is a really good way of exercising that lung muscle, right? And really getting and expelling any of the toxins that's in it that need to be removed. We know that breathing exercises is excellent for that as well. There are so many different types of breath work that can be used. It can be fire breaths or lion breaths. It could be serpent breaths. There's angel breaths, connecting breaths, and all of these different types of breathing exercises, right? And we've done some here in the past, but I often, well, every day I'm finding new ones because I really have to practice that, right, on a daily basis. But for me, in addition to what it's doing for my lungs, it's empowering to me because it's a way of me regulating my mood or handling stress or being able to do something, right, with some energy that you might have in your body. You know, you're at work and you can't necessarily, you know, curse somebody out and keep your job, right? So you might do some different types of breathing exercises. And of course, we used to look at people like they were crazy when they would do stuff like that, right? But this is a very good way of maintaining your sanity, right? And you are in control. So you can control how your body and your mind feels, right? Even though there's some outside influence that you can't necessarily control, right? So whether it's, you might have to go outside for that. You might not want to do that in front of people, then they really think you're crazy. Or in and out the nose. Or there are some that are not as good to demonstrate because it kind of requires some explanation and are softer, you know, breaths. But there are many different types of breathing exercises that we can implement when we need to do something with some anxious energy or some angry energy, or frustration or stress or whatever the case. And again, in addition to it healing you emotionally, it's also healing the lungs because it's getting carbon dioxide out, and it is strengthening the lungs. Now, herbs that are good for lung and respiratory support are herbs like lobelia, peppermint, chaparral, eucalyptus, lungwort, oregano, elecampane, plantain leaves. Mullein is not on this list, but that's a really good one as well. Horehound, yeah, those are really chaparral. So there are a lot of good herbs that are out there for lung health. This is going to be especially important for people who smoke, whatever they smoke, cigars, cigarettes, marijuana. At the very least, for whatever reason you may, you know, smoke, the best thing you can do for yourself is to do some conscious breath work every day, and implement. If you are a tea drinker, whether a hot or cold tea drinker, use any combination of these herbs I just mentioned to really do as much for your lungs as you can while you are, you know, indulging in your smoking habit. And of course, work to get out of that. And I'm not saying that there are not benefits to, say, the marijuana, but whenever we're smoking something, we are intoxicating our lungs. And then there's the need to detoxify and do some kind of cleansing. Okay, so I don't know if there are questions here. And usually Yvonne puts in the chat my email. Some weeks are busier than others, so I'm able to kind of get back to you right away, sometimes not right away. Alkaline breath work is great. Okay, good. And there's so many different types. Yeah. Yeah, and so again, if you need the handout, please email me. If you leave your message here, I'm not going to, and I will have to run out right after today. So I won't have time to go through, which is why I was trying to skim through here now to see if there was something I could answer right quick. But next week we will talk about, and Yvonne, did you put my email? Yeah, she has it in there. So my email is listed there. I see it now. Thank you. So yes, so hopefully you will implement any one of these practices that we've discussed, and you'll focus on, and maybe take it week by week or every 2 or 3 weeks, focus on each of the paths of elimination. You can start with the lungs or the liver or the kidneys or the skin, or the colon, whichever you choose, but actively do something to cleanse and detox one of the paths of elimination, so that our bodies and our minds can function better and we boost immunity that way. Immune boosting herbs are great, but having everything functioning as it should is an optimal way to do it. And so next week we'll talk about more with that, and we'll talk about high blood pressure and diabetes as well. And as always, thanks for listening, and I bid you good health and peace.
Yes, thank you very much, Nana Akua, for this wonderful lecture about detox. I think we all learned something new, and we're going to practice it. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I am because yes, up next we are going to have Dr. Wright Tyrene for the Pan-African History class. Yes, Dr. Wright.
Yes, welcome everyone. Welcome. Let me see the camera. Okay. Hello everyone. Okay, so this week we're moving on to the conversation which we started at the end of reading Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists, around the actual history of Pan-Africanism and the essentially proponents, right? Henry Sylvester Williams is one of them. He initiates the first Pan-African Conference, right? And then Du Bois is one of the sole survivors of the conference, and he initiates the congresses, right? So this week's reading is going to deal with the Pan-African Congresses, and you'll actually see a historic document that I'm going to share that outlines the resolutions for the first Pan-African Congresses and the fifth Pan-African Congress, which is said to be one of the most important to take place, because it is where African leadership declares that independence of individual African nations is not enough, but the total liberation of the African continent really was more the objective, right? And unification of the African continent. And as you all know, we're still in that struggle, right? But this is to give you an understanding of the tradition of our struggle. So even the work that you all are doing in I Love Black People, this is not the first time that we have come together to organize and talk about unification for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation of our people globally. That being said, so I'm just going to recall some of that history. So I didn't spend a lot of time on Du Bois, and this is also one of the things you'll also see is a piece from Du Bois, standing of who he is or who he was in terms of genealogy, and he talks about his own genealogy. So I'll be sharing that as well. It's called On Race, I believe it is. It's an essay that he writes about his parents, his parentage, both sides, and how how he ultimately identifies. And I'm not going to spoil it, but I am sort of going to spoil it. Ultimately, for the purpose of this conversation, ultimately, Du Bois lands on the fact that he is a child of Africa, right? And he talks about what is Africa to me, and he shares a little poem. And he, with all the genealogy he runs down, he conclusively says that he belongs to Africa and African people. And that's significant because Du Bois is a figure that is very complicated over the course of his life, and he lived not to be 90 something years old. He would have numerous political positions. Okay. He starts out, initially during the period of the first Pan-African Conference. At the same time, you can see him writing, and he is shortly after that the initiator of the Niagara movement, right? And he has a philosophy around the talented tenth, the intelligentsia, essentially lifting up the rest of the race. Du Bois is very complicated, because he was involved in terms of identity, saying he was a Black Dutchman, if I'm correct. Somebody correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I know he said Dutchman, but I don't know if he used the term Black Dutchman for sure. That being said, it's seldom that you find African people, Black people overtly identify with any European ancestry. However, Du Bois is a trailblazer because this significant thing, and I'm talking in terms of contributions, not simply words. The first Pan-African Conference took place in 1900. And if you read the chapter from this book, right, that I shared, the chapter on Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists, it takes you sort of on a whirlwind tour around the African world and all the people who were involved in the initiating of the first Pan-African Conference. That's important because Du Bois would be there, present, and he would be a contributor. That being said, all the participants of the first Pan-African Conference would be dead by 1919, the year Du Bois and some others finally get the congresses going, okay? And that's significant because in many ways, a lot of people reference Du Bois as the individual who carried the torch for Pan-Africanism before it became as common, in our lexicon and in terms of knowing about it. He would not forget, and he would establish the congresses, the first of which was in 1919. So the document I'm going to be sharing with you actually gives you the resolutions of that first Pan-African Congress. And it was significant. It was significant that he establishes congresses as opposed to just another conference, because the congresses would be continuous, right? And ultimately will become a think tank for African leadership on the continent. And so this is one of Du Bois' major contributions. He had that foresight. Many years later, the same congresses would produce the 5th Pan-African Congress held in Manchester. And it would be there that Nkrumah and others would say ultimately that, we must forge ahead to continental unity, right? Not long after, and I'm sort of creating a sort of timeline for you in the sense that, the first Pan-African Conference, then the initiation of the congresses, then out of the congresses, an organization born called the Organization of African Unity. And there were factions in that, which I'll get into next time, but I'm not going to get into today. the Organization of African Unity's ultimate objective was continental unification. And this is significant because Pan-Africanism expressed on the continent of Africa means that African people, not Europe, not Asia, not any other, not the Americas, benefit most from what Africa has to offer. And that's a very significant thing because the rest of the world, as I stated in the previous lecture, the rest of the world has their hands in Africa, right? Everyone sort of knows the value of Africa in terms of resources and even human resources. And sometimes we tend to forget. So when I talked about with Patrice Lumumba, how the Congo would go from colonialism, Belgian colonialism, to international colonialism, well, that's the same way you probably should look at the entire African continent. A nice, beautiful bowl with many hands in it, most of them being white, as opposed to reflective of the people who inhabit Africa, the rightful beneficiaries of what Africa has to offer. So the Organization of African Unity ultimate objective is to bring about continental unification. And this is significant. Much later on in 1980, that organization would transform and become known as what we see today, the African Union, with its headquarters in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, okay? I think it's worth saying that there is some conversation that should be had around whether or not the African Union today is forging ahead in the same vein as the original mission of the Organization of African Unity. Some may say no, right? Because places like Israel have been given observer status, at least, in the African Union. How? Does any African nation have observer status in the European Union? No. But I'm going to give you some positives and negatives about the present body. The present body as the African Union have created a number of initiatives. There's even been a decade of African women, all of that. That being said, some of the other positive things is you have Pan-African fair trade, right? Free trade on the continent that came about somewhere around 2015, 2016. And this is a proposal that would open up the borders between African nations and allow nations to trade without tax, perhaps, across borders. This is good because it encourages trade between African nations and concentrating resources on the African continent for African people. There's also been a unified African passport. However, few probably have this, but it didn't exist, back in 2004. And I'm going to 2004 because actually in 2004, there was a major conference around this issue called the First Conference of Intellectuals for Africa and the Diaspora that I was actually a part of, where all the regions came as delegations and gave recommendations as to what would help bring about a unified Africa in every area of life, okay? That was the first time the diaspora was recognized as the sixth region. That was significant because it was actually Muammar Gaddafi who initiated that conference in 2004. And he had his own motive for that, but I'm not going to get into that. The positive thing is that the diaspora was acknowledged, okay? And from that point on forward, the diaspora has been acknowledged as the sixth region of Africa. So positive. So there are some general geographical or regional unification of currency. We know that, okay. ECOWAS has some unification in West Africa, but ultimately the negative is 60%, the last time I checked, of the African Union's funding comes from none other than the European Union. So how is it that the African Union could actually serve the interests of continental unity when the main exploiters of the African continent are also the funders of the continent of Africa's union? Okay, this is deeply problematic, and it is something that in a contemporary context that we have to struggle with. Another negative, and I want you to remember that I gave the positives first, is that the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa was recently redone, built by who? The Chinese, okay, who are now, who now have a pretty strong hold on the African continent in terms of migrating to Africa, immigrating to parts of Africa, having businesses in Africa, you know, particularly East Africa, but I would say all over Africa, because I lived for a time in West Africa and they were there too. And that was a long time ago. So, you know, there are a number of forces on the African continent who may be invested and interested in not seeing continental unity, particularly if our unity is to our benefit, if our unity is to the benefit of African people first, not last, right? So these are some of the present, you know, situations that we're dealing with. And as I stated in my lecture on Patrice Lumumba and the Congo, when we looked at Cuba and African Odyssey, we may feel like people don't care about what we're up to as African people, but certainly they are invested. They have a vested interest in not seeing unification, particularly because of the resources. Okay, human and otherwise, right? And so whoever controls the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries controls the bulk of the world's resources. And someone said to me the other day, well, you know, some of the world's resources are on the equator all the way into South America. True, sure enough. The world's resources, the Earth's resources are like a band on the equator. However, the African continent has the bulk of those resources on the equator, right? So it has the largest concentration of some of the world's most important resources. It's not saying that the rest of the world has no resources, but you're talking about a concentration of the world's most important resources, particularly the kind of resources that sustain things like what we're doing right now using technology, okay? So there are detractors. There are people who negate and detract and interrupt our struggle for liberation and our struggle for what is rightfully ours in terms of resources on the African continent. I think we need to adjust our thinking about what a unified Africa needs to look like. It doesn't necessarily need to be a United States of Africa, because that would simply be a model of the United States. But we do need a unified Africa. And what that looks like and what that ultimately should mean for us is that African people benefit the most and first before anyone else does from what Africa has to offer in terms of resources and human resources, right? So we can't get wedded to the names like the United States of whatever, right? But we should stay on point in terms of understanding that we want measurable gains, right? We want measurable gains. We're people that need so many things. So we should always be poised to qualify everything, what we are getting out, because what we're dealing with presently is neocolonialism in Africa, right? So we have situations in Africa, on the African continent, where it seems like we have political power, but still no economic power. Okay, South Africa is obviously a perfect case in the sense that, you know, so-called end of apartheid led to so-called political power. But still, a bulk of South Africa's resources and the best land are in the hands of Europeans, right? Who now call themselves Afrikaners, but you understand. So the point I'm making today is that you're going to be reading the starting points of this effort to unify the African continent. And I would say we started at individual proponents of Pan-Africanism, right? We looked at specific cases of Pan-Africanism in the diaspora and on the continent, you know, Amilcar Cabral, Patrice Lumumba. We're getting to Nkrumah and others after you read this document. So at this stage, we will be looking at organizational bodies like the Organization of African Unity, looking at organizational bodies like what presently exists now, the African Union, but also we're looking at continental expressions of Pan-Africanism as it manifested on the continent of Africa. What does that mean for us? And if you remember in the syllabus, we want to have a bottom line or a results sort of orientation where we qualify everything, because neocolonialism has taken us for a loop. It's not enough for our leadership to look like us. We need to function in a way where we're assessing whether or not our leadership works for us, right? And benefits us. Symbolism is not enough for people who have so many material needs that go unmet. So the concept of continental unity should produce something for African people, okay? It should not leave our hands empty, right? Ultimately. Okay, so you will get a document that will give you both the resolutions from the first Pan-African Congress and the fifth Pan-African Congress, arguably the most important, right? Where all of these declarations about continental unity come out, okay? And then action takes place. I want to also highlight that after the Manchester Congress in 1945, and there would be swift progress in terms of Africa's liberation struggles. And if this were any place other than the African continent, everyone would still be talking about it today. It's just that it's Africa, and it's not to the benefit of the rest of the world, European world, to glorify and encourage this, because it was to their detriment that African nations took back their physical independence from colonial and imperialist forces on the continent. But in 1962 and 1963, you would have 17 African nations take back their countries from European imperialists. And people talk about the Arab Spring, where all these Arab nations, had movements. Well, what about the African Spring? I mean, I think it was more than a spring. It was a moment in time where numerous African nations underwent transformation and either waged armed struggle or political struggle in order to take back their countries. I want to note that of the places that we studied and the proponents that we studied, Guinea-Bissau in West Africa was the only country that had an armed struggle. And there was not occupation per se, or a large settler population in Guinea-Bissau. However, they, as you saw in the film Cuba, an African Odyssey, did have an armed struggle of sorts. But many East African nations and Southern African nations would have to engage in a measure of armed struggle, notably Kenya and Mozambique and other Tanzania. So these are notable occurrences because of the fact that Europeans would settle in East and Southern Africa. Okay, which gave a very different dynamic to the way their colonial regimes would play out. So the Fifth Pan-African Congress is also on that document, and you can read what they said, what their resolutions were by the end of that Congress. And I also will be sharing the readings on Du Bois, right? Because notably, whether he foresaw it or not, he would become a major force. He is carrying the torch to say we need an organizational and a continuous organizational body that is going to unify the African continent. And he's not born on the African continent, right? He's here in the United States. He's got a lot of things going on around him in terms of his identity, or should I say, he had a lot of things going on in his head in terms of identity, but ultimately, what he does is he becomes an agent of African interest in carrying the torch on to establish the Pan-African Congresses. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. It's probably one of the first times that I'm sort of close to the time. Yep, I am. Okay, good. So I'm going to start with Blast. Can you get in contact with... I don't know who that is. Tan, can you get in comment? Okay. Great. Somebody had to leave. All right. I am because you are. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I think these were for Nana Akua. Oh yeah, okay. So these seems like comments for Nana Akua. Let me see. Are there new replies? Okay, somebody's sharing a new network or platform. Okay, great. That's very Pan-African. Okay, so I don't see any comments or questions, but essentially that will be the program for discourse, okay? Looking at the Congresses and how important they were in giving us organized bodies and also giving us that space to strategize around our present condition. Let me just say one thing. So when I talk about neocolonialism, I assume that everyone understands what that is, but just to make sure, neocolonialism in essence is, Black leadership with a white agenda, right? And it's on the African continent, but it's also out in the diaspora. You should never assume that because someone is identifiably Black, that they ultimately, thank you, Chris Emmanuel, that they ultimately serve our interests. We should always qualify things. The late and great historian, Dr. John Henry Clark, said, we are always ready to celebrate the victory without qualifying the victory. And our orientation should be that of one where we always qualify things, right? We weigh and measure it. Is it substantially in our interest? The Black face that looks like us is not enough. It's never enough. Okay. But over time, we have sort of been pigeonholed into this position where we settle for symbolism and optics. And that's not enough for us. We have real material needs. We have our lives that we want to protect. And those are real things. Those are not symbolic. Okay. And so neocolonialism is, in essence, people who look like us, who may even share some aspects of our culture, being in a leadership or power position, but not essentially advancing our interests. And one of the things colonialism, colonialism and imperialism and slavery and all of that has done to us is that it has taught us something very dangerous, which is that even without direct instruction, it has unfortunately taught us to work against our own best interest almost everywhere we are. Okay, meaning we engage in behavior and do things that do not serve us individually or collectively. And that is part of colonization. That is part of indoctrination. So when we qualify things, that's important. It's an important step that confirms for us whether or not we acted in our own best interest or against it, right? And neocolonialism can be confusing because unless you qualify things, you will be caught up and think that the optics mean that it is a victory for us, right? Many people in the United States are enamored with Obama. And if you qualified his policies, you would not be enamored with him, right? At all, okay? Because what he did and how he looked were two different things, okay? So it's not a beauty contest, it's not a melanin contest, it's a material and a survival contest, really, in the sense that that's not enough for you to look like us, right? And that's what colonialism means. You look like us, but you don't serve our interests. Okay. All right. So that's the end of the lecture. Thank you all. I am because we are. And so I'm looking forward to hearing your criticism and critique of what the resolutions were from the 1st and 5th Pan-African Congresses. Next week, I'm going to talk a lot about Osei-Fo Kwame Nkrumah, programmatically what he thought and what he believed in terms of Pan-Africanism, how it should manifest on the African continent. Some of you may already know that Nkrumah subscribed to Pan-Africanism as being the unification of African nations or people under scientific socialism. Okay. And that's a particular brand of Pan-Africanism. It doesn't negate the overall concept that it is for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation, but the vehicle through which he theorizes we get there is through scientific socialism. Okay. So I'll talk a lot about that, and you'll be educated already coming into that conversation because you will have read the 1st and 5th Pan-African Congress resolutions. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I am because we are. Stay safe until next time. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Wright, for this wonderful lecture.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, I would like to thank everyone that attended this Saturday call. Stay safe. I am because we are. Thank you.